Today's episode of the B&H Photography Podcast is in support of the 2021 OPTIC Outdoor Photo Video Travel Imaging Conference, which is hosted by B&H Photo and held primarily online July 11th and 12th. This year's conference is sponsored by Sony, Nikon, Canon, Sigma Godox, and others. For this episode, I'm going to be leading an audio photo walk, and I invite you to come along with us. So grab your headphones and bring this episode along as we walk along completing several photo challenges and experimenting with different subject matter techniques and gear. On our end, I'm going to be leading a group of three of us, myself, John, and Jason, through the Elizabeth Park Rose Garden, which is located in West Hartford, Connecticut. And we're going to be there in the early evening hours of the day when the light starts getting really nice. This park has lovely flowers, walking paths, a pond, and architectural structures, but you could complete these challenges in a similar park or hiking area near where you live, maybe even in your own backyard. Jason and John will be using wide-angle and telephoto zoom lenses, and we could all complete the challenges with the basic gear that we have. Use what you have. There's no such thing as doing it wrong. If you want to bring a macro or telephoto lens, there's going to be a bonus challenge towards the end of the episode. But these assignments can be completed with, again, any camera and any lens. And remember, please share your best images with us on Twitter and Instagram, and make sure you put on the hashtag BHPhotoPodcast. So, as we prepare to depart to photograph landscapes, flowers, ponds, bridges, and even small birds and wildlife, you can pause the episode to make sure your batteries are fully charged, make sure your lenses are clean, and your camera is ready to go. Consider what you might need for a day of shooting in a park: extra batteries, perhaps memory cards, filters, lens wipes, good shoes, sunscreen, water, and don't forget that macro lens if you have one. This will be a good opportunity to use it. Okay, now you have two choices. You can listen to the episode straight through, and that's fine. Or you could stop right here, get your gear together, get where you're going to be photographing, and when you restart the episode, we're going to be at the park, ready to go with our first challenge. So join us there. Okay. Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast, OPTIC 2021 Audio Photo Walk. And again, I encourage everyone to follow the link in our show notes to the B&H website and register for the free OPTIC conference starting this Sunday, July 11th. Okay, we are in the really gorgeous Elizabeth Park Rose Garden, which is located in West Hartford, Connecticut. This challenge can be completed, though, in most any park or garden anywhere where you live. Okay, let's get started. The first challenge is actually a two-parter. Using a wide-angle lens or the wide end of your zoom lens, photograph a patch of your garden in relationship to the land around it. Focus on composition, look at the sunlight, and then figure out what's the best way to portray this garden as it sits within a larger scene. Think of it as being an environmental portrait, except instead of a person, you're photographing a small garden in relationship of the greater area around it. And that's what wide-angle lenses are really, really good for. And again, before you start shooting, it's always a good idea to walk around a little bit, see how the light is hitting the area, look for larger shapes and dominant things to have in your foreground. One important part of using a wide-angle lens is to have something in your foreground or the background that is dominant, that will be an anchor point for your eye. That's a real important part of using a wide-angle lens. And again, this is the kind of thing you could do in any kind of a garden situation, no matter where you are. For the second half of this assignment, use the same focal length, the same lens, and get in as close to the flowers as you can focus. And then feature just one or two flowers, and then show the background. Again, make it in an environmental portrait, except this time, instead of the garden being the center of your subject, have a flower or one or two, maybe three flowers being very dominant in the foreground, and then show the rest of the surroundings in the background and how they relate to those flowers. And again, while you're composing, play around with selective focus. Stop your lens down to smaller apertures to increase your depth of field. And then try shooting at the widest aperture, which will just keep your flowers in focus and then keep a softer background. Make it a little bit more ethereal. But play around with it, because every time you change your aperture, you change the photograph. And while you're there, go a little bit higher, go a little bit lower. Don't stick to eye level. Play around with the angle and play with the sun. If the flower will allow sunlight to come through it, backlight it. Watch it light up from behind. You don't always have to shoot with the sun falling onto your subject. Okay, so here's the way we're going to work it today. John and Jason have accepted the challenge to photograph the rose garden here, and I'm going to be kind of the teacher that I'm going to be looking at this stuff, and we're going to be talking about ways of approaching the different flowers in different parts of the garden as we go along. First thing I want to do is let's go over some of the equipment that everyone's going to be using. John's going to be using a Nikon D750, and he's also going to be shooting with a Sigma 24 to 70 millimeter 2.8 DG, which is a really nice lens. And Jason's going to be shooting his rose garden with a Sony A7R4 with a Sony Zeiss FE 16 to 35 f4 lens. So kind of comparable equipment from two different manufacturers. And again, it's going to be how each of them see the garden and how they want to capture it and portray it. Okay, now if you're taking part of the challenge at home, feel free to listen along as we walk and talk, or pause the episode anytime you want, just to take pictures and come back to it and then continue from there. And again, the whole thing is about going out and taking pictures and trying things and learning how to use your wide-angle lens. John and Jason are going to go off to start photographing. I'm going to tag along with them. This is a good time for you to go do the same. Put this episode on pause and come back when you're finished, and probably we'll be finished around the same time too. So we'll see you when we come back with the next challenge. Okay, we are at the flower challenge right now. I'm with John, and we're in the middle of the rose garden, which is amazing. It's a couple of acres. No matter where you look, there's different color roses. Some of them are planted in the ground as bushes. Some of them wind their way around these large arches that go up way over 10 feet, and they just spiral out from the center gazebo. So it's pretty impressive no matter where you go. It's just visually wonderful. And right now, John is using his wide-angle lens. He's shooting with the arches. He's going to do some overall pictures, and then he's going to try to get into real close to some of the flower clusters, and then use the surroundings as a background, sort of, again, environmental portrait, it's really a portrait of the flower in its surroundings. One of the things that's kind of unique right now is that while it's been sunny out, the sun just went in. So while it was harder in a certain way to shoot before because you had to basically find flowers that were lit well and not backlit in a way that isn't flattering. But right now the light is even. So it's just a matter of photographing the petals themselves, the leaves themselves, and the exposures are very even no matter where you aim your camera. It's an even source of light. So right now John is shooting real close up, and he's keeping the rest of the garden in the background for some of these photographs, and he already shot some overall photographs for the big shot. Is that correct?
Yeah, for the earlier shot, I was way away from this part of the garden, but trying to get, as the sun passed, get the rose aspect of it, the flowered colors in that sunlight, and the foreground was in shadow. So hopefully, the colors in the background will pop and it'll show off the whole giant space that we're here. And now I got the 2470, and I'm focusing on the clusters of incredibly deep red roses, some of which have already died, and I'm liking that. I'm going to use a wide aperture and try to get some selective focus on the dead part. The living petals surrounding the dead part will hopefully look pretty interesting.
Right now we're about 2/3 of the way through the rose season, which is relatively short. It's only a couple of weeks. And this garden's been pumping out zillions of flowers every single day for a good couple of weeks now. So a lot of them are past prime, but there are still a lot of new buds that haven't even opened up yet. And I imagine it'll be about another 2 weeks. But right now, it's a mixture of old and new, and they do clean it up every day. But it's quite possible, and it's easy to get some interesting compositions when you have new fresh flowers surrounded by some dried petals, which have a totally different texture to them. So again, just because a flower is dying doesn't mean it's the end of the story. Quite often, it's just the beginning of the story. So keep looking, keep shooting.
So now I'm going to manual focus because I have this group of rose petals, different flowers, and there's one that happens to be leaning forward a little bit, and I'm going to focus on that and then fill the frame with the ones that are behind it and to the left.
Okay. So Jay, how are you coming along here so far with the flowers?
I'm getting some decent compositions, but I really wish I had like a little bit of a longer lens so I could take some kind of close-up, sort of macro-ish kind of close-ups to the flowers, but I'm getting some shots.
So I think really the bigger issue is the fact that you can't focus close enough. It's not necessarily focal length, or is you just can't focus close enough?
Yeah, this exactly. If I go real close with this wide angle, it's not going to focus close enough for me to be able to shoot like a shot like that. Yeah, that's
Gotcha.
it. Yeah.
Okay. Now, by the way, just as a little tip, if anybody out there who's listening to this has the same problem with, like in this case, it's a 1635 that doesn't focus close enough, an easy solution to that is an extension tube, probably an 8 or a 12 millimeter extension tube, and that will get you, say your lens doesn't only focus down to 2 feet, now you'll be able to get into maybe 8 or 9 inches, and at that point, you could start taking some pretty dynamic pictures. And again, extension tubes are inexpensive, and they work real well, and they're easy to just drop into your bag and always have handy. Okay, John is now doing his wide shot of the garden, of the rose garden itself. Real pretty. Again, a lot of symmetry going on here. And it's clouded up a little bit, and the exposures can be a little bit tricky. The shadows can start getting a little bit dark. So the best thing to do in this situation is to expose for the highlights, which is really where the sky is, and then open up all the shadows post. It's a lot easier to do that. Again, the worst thing you could do is blow out your highlights. You can't get them back. But shadows, they always have a lot more information in that, especially if you're shooting raw, which again, I always highly recommend. Okay, we're going to take a short break for a drink of water, put on more bug spray and sunscreen. We'll be right back. Join us.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. The best way to support the show is by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For links to gear and more information on today's guests, check out the show notes in your podcast app or visit our homepage on the B&H Explorer website and join the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group. And now, back to the show.
Okay, we're back, and the second part of the assignment has to do with water. Now, in the park that we're at, there's two lovely ponds with stone bridges, and we're going to be centering our second challenge on this body of water. And again, hopefully you can find a pond, a lake, a stream, or some kind of a fountain or body of water near where you live or work that you could also take part of this challenge. Now, the first aspect of the assignment is to experiment with shutter speeds. Try to get a photograph that blurs the moving water to make it appear smooth and kind of creamy. And in contrast, a photograph in which you use a fast shutter speed to freeze the water and have it be frozen still. Both of these can be especially effective when photographing a stream or other fast-moving water, but slow shutter speeds, when done right, can create magical imagery of any kind of water surface. And remember to adjust your aperture and ISO levels for the longer exposures, and I also strongly suggest a tripod for longer exposures. And for this challenge, you can use any focal length lens that works for your concept. And also, here's another little tip for you. If you want to get shutter speeds even slower on bright sunny days, try ND or neutral density filters or a polarizing filter. They will, again, steal about another 2 or more stops of light, give you more chance to blur your water. Now, the second part of the water challenge is about reflections and refractions. Incorporate the reflection of the water into your image. For a larger lake or pond, consider the trees and landscape around the lake, and for streams, perhaps zoom in for reflections near the water or abstract details of refraction in the water. And again, if you want still water, sometimes the best time to shoot that is towards dawn and sunset. Keep that in mind. Midday, the wind tends to be a little stronger. Also note the time of day you're photographing. Reflections might be better depending on the angle of the sun. So again, very time dependent. And also note how the wind affects the water surface and perhaps the mist that comes in the early mornings. There's a lot of factors that go into this particular part of the assignment. And again, just as with the earlier part of the assignment, you could put this episode on pause anytime you want, stop the show, go and shoot. Go photograph some of the reflections, or perhaps try blurring the water or freezing the water, and then come back. Take whatever time you need, come back, turn on the episode, and continue on with Jason, John, and myself as we go along on this little project. Okay, now we're up to the water challenge of getting still water and getting blurred water. And I'm going to head over to one of the larger ponds where there's a little bit more movement in the water with Jason. And John's going to stay back over here, right?
Yeah, I'm going to stay back here and try to work this bridge and get some reflections off the water in this more still little lake area.
Okay. There are 2 ponds here, and I'm going to take a walk over to one of the larger ponds with Jason. The water's moving a little bit more, and it's got some fountains in it. We're going to try to freeze the water and get some blur. Okay, don't get in trouble now, John. Okay, we're gonna check up on you. Okay. Meantime, Jay and I are gonna head over to the big pond. Jay's over here. There are some cedars, really beautiful old cedar trees, and the sunlight is coming through. Very low angle, very warm tone. It's late afternoon light. It's getting real pretty, and it looks like we're deep in the woods somewhere. In the meantime, we're in the middle of a small city.
No, I'm seeing some nice light on these trees, on these cedars here. They're beautiful. And I'm just trying to find some cool compositions and take advantage of the good light.
Now, what you might want to do is try getting close again. You see how these knots are coming out of these one, and frame. Use this in the foreground, get as close as you can, and then have the other trees in the background. But there's some really neat forms going on here, and the coloration is really nice on it. It's got little reddish tones coming through, so go for that.
Totally. Thank you.
Okay, we're at the side of one of the larger ponds here, and there are two sprinkler systems in the middle of it to keep the water moving around. And the sun is out right now, and the sun is hitting it from the side, so the light itself is really delineating the water as it sprouts out of the fountain. And Jay's going to try to get some shots where he'll freeze it, and then he's going to get some shots with longer exposures where the water itself is just going to be a smooth, creamy stream of water. Let's see how good he does. John just strolled back here from his little photo joint. He doesn't look as happy. What happened to you?
Well, I did the reflections when the sun was out and got, I think, some pretty good shots of the water reflecting off the stones. But then when I tried to do the slow shutter speed, here I'm working without a tripod, and it just is not working. I mean,
Sorry about that.
Jay, you think that's funny, huh? As you're standing there working on a tripod. Yeah, I know.
I say, well, I didn't bring a tripod. Well, I didn't bring a tripod, so I thought what I'd do is I'd set the shutter speed to slow enough to get the blur of the water, but fast enough that I could hold it up against my chest and keep it still. It just didn't work.
Yeah, and by the way, that's actually a good thing to do if you have to shoot at low shutter speeds and you don't have a tripod. Number one, if you have image stabilization, turn it on and use it. Try to use a wider aperture if you can. The wider the aperture, the faster your shutter speed. Every time you open up one stop, you double your shutter speed. So that's pretty good, or you have it, I should say. Excuse me. And another thing John mentioned, to further stabilize himself, he held the camera with two hands, one under the body and one under the lens, underneath it, palming it. And then he used his two elbows into his gut and used it basically to stabilize it. And one little extra little trick you can do when you do that is just before you press the shutter, exhale. Don't inhale. A lot of people take a breath and hold it. What that actually does, it amplifies your pulse and makes you shake a little bit more. So if you are going to be shooting handheld at a slow speed, turn on image stabilization, take the camera, hold it with two hands, brace your elbows against your stomach, hold it steady, squeeze off exposure, but first exhale, fire, and then inhale. Try it. It works. Okay, so Jay, you've been photographing the water. How did you make out? I know you were waiting for some of these geese and ducks to come into the frame. How'd that work out?
I got good light on some shots, and I got ducks in the foreground on other shots, but I didn't get ducks in the foreground and good light in the same photo. So, oh well. Or, there's always Photoshop, I
That's
guess.
it. That's what Photoshop was invented for. Yep. So ultimately you'll have that duck and the goose in front of the water with the bright light.
That
so
is true.
all doable.
I'll do it.
Okay, I just came across John. He's actually also in another part of the pond right now. And you just came across an interesting revelation, huh?
Yeah, well, I used the bridge that goes over the pond basically as my tripod. It's at waist height.
A ledge. Uh-huh.
It's a ledge. I was able to lean on it, put the camera on it, stabilize it completely, and shoot that fountain at long exposures, and I think it's going to turn out all right.
Yeah, now, before you walk away, step back now and look at the brick wall that's going on there, okay? Jay, step back for a second and look at all the detail you got there. Now you could do another shot framing the foreground. You've got the stone wall, and you got the trees and the fountain, and there you go. It looks good.
Actually, hold on. Let me move it. I am going to shoot this really quick.
Oh, there's an armada coming here.
Yeah, shoot. What is that, a
Yeah, give me.
24-70?
Here you go. Oops, sorry.
Is that
Yeah,
24? Is that a
Go. I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
Heads up, Jay. Yeah, no, hold on. Get out of the way for a quick sec. Get your shadow out of there. There you go.
So again, the important thing there is, see how many times you could frame a picture. Here you had the foreground, you had a stone wall, and you have trees over it, and then you got the fountain in the center of it. Frames everything.
8 billion birds coming.
And 8 billion geese. Okay, that was really good. Now let's get on to our third challenge, which is architecture. The location we're shooting, there's going to be a choice. There are some lovely stone bridges over the pond and a 19th century gazebo that we could photograph. There's also a really nice small house with a greenhouse structure that has little gardens in front of it and some really nice landscaping. Now, the goal of the challenge is to tell the story of the building in 3 images. One photo that shows the whole structure, a second photograph with an important detail of its design, and a third photo of whatever you choose to photograph. These images can be taken at any focal length that you determine works best for telling the story. But remember the parameters. Take 1 wide shot, 1 detail, and then 1 whatever makes you happy. Now, for our virtual photo walkers, please find a structure in your park that works for this challenge, or even a nice structure down the street from where you live, or maybe even your own house. It could be a bridge, any kind of structure or building that's within walking distance of where you are. And if there's no architecture that fits the bill, perhaps fallen trees or fences might work, or feel free to use adjacent urban structures if your park is city-bound. Consider the light and shadow in this challenge, as well as how to best describe and edit to tell a story with images. Again, we're talking about storytelling. Now would be a good time to push the pause button on this episode. Go take pictures, take your time, look, move around, use your eyes, watch what's going on around you, and when you take your pictures, come back to the episode and we'll take it from there. Okay, I'm with John right now. We're in front of a greenhouse that has a lot of young plants in it, a lot of palm trees, and it's up against another building. It's got some really nice sunlight hitting it right now, a lot of curved lines on it, and also there's a lot of landscaping in front of it. And I think what's nice about this is that you could shoot with a wide-angle lens without having to look up too far, which means that you're not going to have keystoning problems. Really important if you're shooting architecture to keep your camera level. You don't want to aim too far up or too far down because it'll look like the building's falling over. That's called keystoning. So as long as you keep your camera straight, you eliminate that problem.
Yeah,
Also, something that's needed. Go ahead.
no, I'm saying, yeah, as I move my camera tilted up and down, I can see that keystoning effect happening. As I keep it level and I'm staring straight at that building from a distance of maybe, I don't know, 15, 16 feet, you don't see that keystoning effect. But as soon as I tilt the camera up, you can start to see it at the base of the building.
Yep, that's it. Exactly.
So I'm going to just shoot my first photo. I'm going to just shoot my first photo for this challenge of the building in its whole. I have a little angle on it, and with the 24 millimeter on the end of my 2470, it fits the building perfectly, with just a little bit of the outside landscaping and roses. So it's a perfect, simple photo.
And you got it just in time because the sun is dropping behind the trees off to the right, and it's casting a shadow across the foreground. Now, one thing I would suggest is if you go off to the other side over here, because there's a lot of landscaping going on and some interesting angles with flowers, and if you shoot from a low angle behind these flowers and have the flowers as a foreground and then put the building as your background.
That's a good idea. The thing I did was pretty basic. It was just the building. But yeah, so incorporate some of the land around it. I'll give it a go.
Again, treat it like an environmental portrait, except you're doing a portrait of a building.
I gotta take a picture again. Okay, so here I am on the ground with some flowers in their flower bed right in front of me, and the building's off in the distance. So what I want to do is have both building and photos in focus. All right, how do I set that up on my aperture?
You're going to want to have the smallest aperture right now. If you go, yeah, small as it goes. F16, most lenses, if you have 22, do that too. That'll give you the maximum depth of field.
Okay, so I'm on ISO 400 at F22, and I'm going to go check my shutter speed to make sure it's not overexposed. Of course, it is particularly overexposed now. I'm trying to get focus there.
Now, I would also watch where the focus is falling, because if it's falling too close, like say to the first flowers, whatever's closest to the lens, your background will be softer. So sometimes you want to be able to focus into the scene a little bit, about 1/3 of the way in, and then with your lens stopped all the way down with a wide angle, you're going to have maximum depth of field right there.
All right, so I'm going to focus on a flower that's not the one right in my face, but just a little bit off. And the ones there in the foreground hopefully will be in focus just like the building will be. And my aperture is at f1.25. I'm sorry, it's f22, and my shutter speed is at 125.
Okay, and you don't want to really handhold much slower than that, even with a wide-angle lens. Another thing going on here today is a stiff breeze is about an 11-mile-an-hour wind, so the flowers are moving around a little bit. So 125th, some of the flowers actually might blur a bit.
Right, it might look good with the, actually, now that I actually went down to 60 to make it a little bright in the foreground, I'm sure the movement now of those flowers will be there, and it might look pretty good.
And by the way, this is another situation where you could do movement, because if you were on a small tripod at ground level and you slowed your shutter even more, you could have the flowers really blurring in the foreground and everything else sharp.
Yep.
So it's not just water.
Now let me give that a go. I'm going to see how slow I can go without overexposing.
And again, what's good right now is that you're laying down on the ground using your elbows, and you're holding the camera in two hands, and you're pressing the finder against your forehead. So you have like 5-point contact, and that's a good way of holding your lens at slow speeds. And if you have image stabilization, now's a great time to turn it on. Okay, now the sun is going behind some clouds, so we're losing. It's a totally different dynamic right now. By the way, something I strongly urge you to do when you're shooting color outside is that there's two choices you could do for color balance. You could put it in auto white balance, which works quite well with most cameras. But when I'm shooting outdoors and the sun is out, I really prefer keeping it in the sun mode, or 5600 Kelvin, which is daylight. Like that, if you're shooting early in the morning and the light is warm, it'll stay warm, as opposed to auto white balance. If you're shooting beautiful gold light early in the morning, late in the afternoon, auto white balance will often correct the warmth and try to neutralize it, and that's not what you want. So stick to daylight whenever possible.
All right, cool. I'm going to try to get these flowers here, which are a little...
Okay, now with Jay, and he's photographing the building also right now. So you've got, a 16 to 35, and you're shooting at about... looks like 30 millimeters. So you zoomed in a little bit.
Yep.
And you got, let's see what you got there. You got the flowers in the foreground. Okay, that's a nice shot. Nice symmetry in there.
Yep.
It's also interesting. You've got half of the foreground is in shadow from the trees, and the other is in highlight. It adds actually a nice dimension and form to it. And everything is pretty much side lit, a little bit of front. It's got a lot of nice form to it right now. It's actually a pretty time to shoot.
Yep, and I like the light on the foreground and the flowers a little bit here.
Yep. And again, here we have violet flowers and white flowers against green lawn and then a white structure. And then there's blue sky with white clouds. It's actually a lovely composition. The light is really pretty. And we're getting into late afternoon, so with the sun dropping, the light is starting to warm up right now. We're shooting in the middle of June. And midday, the light could be horribly harsh, very, very contrasty, very blue. But towards the end of the day and early part of the day, the light is much more forgiving. It's warmer, softer, and much more inviting, a lot prettier.
I'm gonna get a little weird now, and a little.
What's different about that?
Nothing. I'm gonna focus stack because I want to make sure I get these flowers in focus.
Now, also, you're using some accessories over here. What do you have over here? You're not using your camera shutter directly. You're using a remote, right?
Yeah, I'm using a remote. I'm using the remote just to get a sharper picture, so I don't have to have my hands on the camera. I could use the timer. But is it necessary? Maybe not.
No, actually, no. It's a good point because Jay's using a cable release, which means that he's not touching his camera.
I do a lot of long exposure, so I'm very used to using this thing because it really makes a difference with there. And I might stop down and try to get some, in a minute, try to stop down and get a shot where I get like some cloud movement, like on F22. I didn't bring an ND filter.
Okay, go for it. By the way, if you don't have a cable release, one thing I often do when I'm shooting at slower shutter speeds or I just want to have the least amount of camera movement, I put my camera on to a delay. On my camera, I have a choice of either 2 seconds or 10 or 12 seconds. And I find that 2 seconds is more than enough, especially obviously working on a tripod. Press the button, take my hand away, and in that 2 seconds, the camera is still, it's not moving, and that guarantees a better, sharper picture. I'm going to let you get back to shooting because we still have bridges to hit. Now, one of the interesting things that's going on here today is that it's either been really sunny with nice little puffy clouds or it becomes totally cloudy, which changes all of the lighting. It's really, really nice when the sun is out because it gives contour to everything. It gives a lot of form. It emphasizes highlight and shadow, which is what photography is all about. Once the clouds come over, though, you get a different phenomenon going on, and the shadows and highlights are now flattened. It's an equal thing. Now, that's also good because it gives you more options for places to shoot rather than having something heavily backlit, for instance, from the sun. There's no such thing as backlighting when it's cloudy outside, no matter where you hold your lens and how you position it. You have even lighting in most outdoor situations. So while it's nice to have the sunlight, and it's really, really pretty, When it's overcast, doesn't mean you have to stop working. It just opens up new options and gives you new challenges. I hope you've been enjoying this photo walk as much as we have. And again, we encourage you to check out the OPTIC 2021 Outdoor Photo Video Travel Imaging Conference, which starts on Sunday, July 11th, with keynote speaker Tudinoy and many other wonderful outdoor travel and nature photographers presenting their work and discussing technique. If you go to the B&H website, you can get more details and find out more about who's speaking and when they're going to be talking. So now for a final challenge of the walk. If you brought a macro lens or telephoto zoom lens, there are 2 possible bonus assignments. If you have a macro or close-up lens, I'd like you to bring that to the garden again and capture the details of a flower or plant. Use the macro lens to its fullest. Create selective focus. Try for sharp focus. Stop the lens down for maximum focus. Try for the thinnest slivers. If you have a telephoto lens, either prime or zoom, your bonus challenge is to photograph a bird or small animal in its habitat, ideally while eating or with its offspring. Preferably not eating its offspring, though. Okay, we're going to leave you with that challenge to complete on your own at your own pace. And if you have a picture that you're really happy with, remember, post it onto Instagram or Twitter with the hashtag BHPhotoPodcast. We'd like to thank you all again for joining us. Remember to register for OPTIC 2021, which is sponsored by Sony, Canon, Nikon, Sigma, Godox, and others. And all of this can be found on the B&H Photo website with links in our show notes. And remember, if you are not a subscriber, head on over to Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, and sign up. It's so easy and it's free, and you'll never miss another episode. All that said, my name is Alan Weitz, and on behalf of John Harris and Jason Tables, thank you oh so much for tuning in today. Show them the last picture you took.